This is Marek Fuchs here today to talk to you about what happened with healthcare stocks in the stock market at large last week, and more importantly, puzzle out what might be happening in the coming week. Now, last week obviously was a short-sheeted week thanks to Thanksgiving and the truncated turkey day that followed. But that doesn't mean the week was without news. It's a question of whether or not that news was anything that you can adequately use, which brings us obviously to Black Friday, the so-called cut and dry day where all retailers turn into the black. But here's how it plays out. And especially amateur investors tend to be fooled by this a little bit, because what the media does is they send out their lowest rung reporter, who else is working that day, and they become fixated with these images, which are great, which play well on television, of shoppers in line, tussling, trouncing each other, trampling each other. But here's the deal. They sort of weave this into a tale of everlasting and systemic and national demand for retail goods. But that's not often the underlying reality. In other words, every year they do this, and every year the retail industry isn't good, because one of the things that media ignores and is central and essential to Wall Street's reaction to the shopping season is profits. In other words, quite often, and you see this with Best Buy and others, they're offering 50, 75% off. That's how they gin up these crowds. But guess what? Their profits are lean, if they exist at all. And the key underlying issue is not how many shoppers show up, but whether or not the retailers are selling them at a price that can be sustainable and viable in terms of those profits. There's also the issue, obviously, of consumer debt. If consumers are buying all these big screen TVs and Apple products with consumer debt, it's not as lasting as if they're buying it for cash. And if they're buying it for debt, it means we're circling more back toward our problems of the past, more than getting away from them. So those are all complexities. They're all intricacies that will come to the fore, and we'll try to make sense of them in the coming weeks as some of these statistics come out. So don't be fooled. Don't be lulled by this sort of coverage that lulls people in the wake of Black Friday again and again and again. Now, also last week we saw a little bit of news out there, including one watermelon bit of news, that a company tried to slide in during the quiet of the holiday season, hoping that you wouldn't notice, or wouldn't notice as much as you would if the news came about during a normal time period. HP was obviously reporting, and they took the moment to take an enormous, nearly $9 billion write-down for their autonomy acquisition, and accusations and counter-accusations were hurled back and forth between HP and autonomy. This is a big, big mess, something HP didn't want you to take too much notice of. But when a company does something big in the quiet of a holiday week, you got to make sure to pay double attention. Now, it was a very good week in the market, but you do need to curb your enthusiasm, right? Good or bad. The point is, it was a light trading week. And when it's a light trading week, well, whatever happened just doesn't have that lasting effect that it does when the market builds a big, wide base, a lot of volume. Also, there were these kind of big ticket, big issue items that traders were feeling one way about. Black Friday they felt good about, but that's not necessarily lasting. As I said, the complexities tend to bubble to the surface. The other thing was the fiscal cliff. The market was a little bit free and easy about that last week, but when it comes to the fiscal cliff, when it comes to dancing along the lip of any cliff, the market tends to be a little bit manic depressive. So watch for a possible shift in mood this week. Also this week, and particularly in the fiscal cliff, I look for some concern with taxes on dividends, particularly companies like J&J, Pfizer really, and Merck, two dividend-paying companies I really like. Traders are going to get a little bit nervous if they think the tax on dividend might veer more toward regular income tax under any kind of settlement. If they think more about 20%, the market will be a little bit freer and easier there, but this might be cause for concern over the next few weeks with a couple of those companies. Also, the Wall Street Journal on Sunday reported that Baxter was in talks to by Gambro for about $4 billion to augment or fill out their kidney dialysis business. Now, it's important to note that those sources were anonymous. The Wall Street Journal, they sourced several people close to the negotiations and said it might be consummated in 2 to 3 weeks. Now, this offers no assurances, but it's certainly better than some of these fly-by-night reports you see about mergers that, number one, are only mentioning one source, and number two, that source seems like he might be an investment banker who just had preliminary talks with the companies, trying to kind of put them in play. This thing does, if instinct and intuition serves us right, seems a little bit more advanced, which again offers no assurances, but is certainly better than the alternative. Now, also the FDA this week, Theransis, I can never pronounce that, their powder for pneumonia, it hit an FDA panel, but it's really a big ticket week in terms of consumer confidence numbers and housing numbers, which you have to be careful about because we're going to have some hurricane stuff that's going to impact and affect them to a bit. Also, GDP revision is going to come out. Now, these revisions are often huge, big, upwards of 50%. Last number came in at 2%. Expectations for big revision on the upside. Be a little bit wary there. I would be too. Also, the economic cliff, more worries there probably, and also the Middle East, and even more about obviously Black Friday, and beware of that for all the reasons we said. Anyhow, if you disagree with me about any of this, and you won't, but if you do, feel free to tweet me. My Twitter handle is down below this video. Also, feel free to tweet me any and all questions. Most of all, have a happy, healthy, and profitable week.